This is Under the Shadow of My Roof, the story of Lot's daughters. For those of you who are up on the story of Lot and his daughters. Part 1, Dinner Guests. Behold now, I have 2 daughters which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. Are they listening from upstairs, crouching in the dark, Lot's virginal daughters? Do they hear their father offer them to the clouds clamoring outside the house for the 2 strangers that sat with them at dinner? Does horror creep over them at his words, their hands turning cold against the stone wall, their breath held in their chests? Do they wish they had brothers to be offered instead of them? Or do they know that sons are not made to be offered as daughters are? We can assume they know their place in this world. We can assume they know that if this story is to be written, their names will not appear. They are Lot's daughters, and that should be enough. But we need names for everyone these days, women no less than men. So we will give Lot's daughters names of their own, Abigail for the elder, and Jerusha, which means possession in Hebrew, the younger. For Jerusha was her father's possession and fated to belong to no one else. So Abigail and Jerusha are home with only each other and their servants, braiding each other's hair for dinner. To be historically accurate, we can assume that both girls have brown skin and dark hair that curls, especially in damp weather. In a hail of fire and brimstone, their hair would lose all its curls, standing straight up from their heads, from fright or the heat, it doesn't matter. But tonight it's just curly, and Abigail is braiding her sister's curly hair when the father bursts in, out of breath. Girls, put on your best dresses, a pair of angels are having dinner with us. Should the girls be shocked that 2 angels of the Lord have deigned to sup with their family? Surprised, maybe, but in these days, God and his angels live closer with men than they do in modern times. This is not necessarily an advantage, God not being housebroken, and is likely to strike you with blindness as he is to suddenly give you your heart's desire 50 years after you stopped wanting it, like he did for Lot's aunt, Sarai, or Sarah, as she came to be known, one of the few women in these days privileged to have a name she was given to. After she got knocked up at the ripe old age of 100, as sure a sign of God's power as turning the moon to blood. Who would be shocked then in times like these at the appearance of 2 angels, nice enough looking guys in their own way, Abigail thinks, just in time for dinner. The story tells of Lot himself, wealthy landowner notwithstanding, making dinner and baking unleavened bread for the visitors. Lot knew when he first saw them at the gate that they were angels of the Lord, and with God like Yahweh, it is wise to do what you can to keep him happy. Abigail and Jerusha are privileged to sit at the same table as the angels, Jerusha whispering to her sister that they don't look like she expected angels to look. Not that she is disappointed, far from it. The one on the left with the hooked nose will keep her imagination company for many nights to come. But they do not speak aloud as girls without even names. They couldn't expect to converse freely with angels. It's while the servants are clearing the dishes that the family hears the commotion growing just outside the doors of the house. Lot goes out to see what's up, sending the women upstairs. Abigail and Jerusha crack the window and hear everything from the darkness of their room. The men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. This is the passage, just 2 words of it really, that causes so much confusion about this story. The 2 words are men and know. Biblical scholars will contend that the word for men could also mean people, and in fact is a mixed crowd of sodomites surrounding the house, men, women, and children. And know, while used elsewhere in the Bible to mean have sex with, is by no means its exclusive meaning. The people of Sodom may have meant to say that we may torture them to know if they are enemy spies, which isn't particularly welcoming, but there you are. It is from these 2 words that a world of assumptions was born about the nature of Sodom's sin in God's eyes, when it may actually have been a case of inhospitality for which God had destroyed cities other than Sodom. The term sodomize then might more properly refer to one's ill treatment of a guest, as in, I really sodomized my cousin when I didn't offer him something to drink. Whatever the crowd's intentions, they aren't kindly toward the strangers, unless they really do simply want to have sex with them. No rape involved, just a bit of friendly sodomy, in which case reports of the men's physical beauty must have spread like wildfire, or even brimstone raining from heaven to get half the town battering at Lot's door. To Abigail and Jerusha, crouching in the dark, listening to the rabid mob just outside at the door, it doesn't really matter the meaning of no, or whether the chilling sounds come from men alone or include the women of the city. What sudden horror, what panic must overtake them at hearing their father, their own flesh, offer them up. Abigail and Jerusha. Virginity intact in exchange for leaving his house guests alone. Jerusha, being the younger, can't contain it, her daddy having offered her to the beasts outside, and she starts from her place below the window, a scream jumping in her throat. But Abigail, quick on the uptake, clamps a hand over her sister's mouth and listens as the crowd makes its reply, almost with one voice. No, give us the strangers. The girls let out their breath. Jerusha creeps closer to the window on her knees and peers out to the street below. The crowd is greater than she had imagined, angry people pressing in on the house, pounding at the door, and a single boy, about 8 years old, looks up, the whites of his eyes showing against his dark skin, against the dark of the night. He sees Jerusha. She is unable to move, her mouth open. She watches the child as he shows his teeth and fills his lungs to call out. And then a milky film slides over his eyes. Whatever he planned to say comes out strangled. The sound of a dog caught in a snare, the cry taken up by the entire crowd. A darker night has fallen over them. They wander like blind men, for that is what they are. Struck blind in a breath, lost in rapacious darkness, blind for the few remaining hours of their lives. Part 2, Flight. It is night. The angels have hurried the family away from home with predictions of the city's doom, urging them on while they still had feet to carry them. There is little time to pack, a few essentials, but none of the servants. Even Abigail and Jerusha's intended husbands stayed behind, figuring they could find more reasonable in-laws there in the city. Lot had seemed like a decent prospect, a rich guy, and a hero to boot, but you never can tell. A wild-eyed lunatic was lurking all the time. It is night then, and the family has slipped out of the city walls, not about to question the words of the heavenly messengers. Get out, and don't look back. It's possible that Abigail and Jerusha's mother took that injunction metaphorically, as in, don't get all nostalgic for a city that's about to be reduced to ashes. Is, at this moment, as you rush into the night, being consumed in fire, and maybe already Lot's wife can smell sulfur and burning flesh, can hear screams and half-human gurgles escaping from what were an hour ago healthy and beautiful throats. Maybe she can even pick out the voices of friends or her sons-in-law, never to be. But emissaries of the Lord should always be taken literally. Something pulls at her heart, dares her just a glance. It isn't really a look, not a proper one, just a bit of flame catching my eye, but the Lord will not be deceived. No matter how infinitesimal the measure of time that her eyes rest on the dying city, when God says, don't look back, he means it. And Jerusha, following close behind her mom, sees her head begin to turn and reaches out, not realizing it's too late, it's already done. And a shot goes through her body straight into the soul that God sees as clearly as the lips on her face when her fingers meet not the warm flesh of her mother's shoulder, but crystallized salt. How biblical, how creative. That Yahweh is full of surprises. And Jerusha bruises her tender fingers on what was her mother, what still shows the outlines of her mother's face, eyes wide open, blindly witnessing the destruction of their former home. Part 3, Making Do. In the end, the girls may have reason to suspect their father has turned into the very paranoid wacko their burnt fiancés believed him to be, before they were turned to charred flesh, then bits of bone, then running fat and ashes blowing in the wind that chased the family, now only 3, into exile, For Lot decided that any city was too dangerous, best to hole up in a cave, and there the three of them live. Lot grows old, his beard grows long, and his skin hangs loose from his bones, while his daughters mature, their hips filling out while his sink in. They are rounder and slower moving, and Jerusha dreams every night of the angel with the hooked nose and long hands that might have known what to do with a virgin. So it is that Abigail, ever aware of her familial duties, turns to her sister and says, "Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father." It's as good an excuse as any. What other prospects do they have? Women now, no longer girls, living in a cave on the edge of the wilderness. So they get their father drunk, and Abigail, being the eldest, takes the first turn. The scriptures here say, "He perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose," which we might suppose was meant to spare him blame for any incestuous act. But he must participate to a certain extent, biology being what it is. The world has never seen a man that insensible, that falling down drunk, whose little man can still stand up long enough to complete the job. But this is a time of miracles, and if a mother can become a hunk of salt between one breath and another, then why can't a father be so blind drunk he doesn't know he's impregnating his own daughter? But Abigail can't keep all the fun for herself. The next night, it's Jerusha's turn. So they offer Pops the hair of the dog, and again Lot is legless, but still well equipped with the limb that will father 2 entire tribes on his daughter's bodies. Jerusha creeps into the cave while Abigail waits out front, serene in the knowledge that she has fulfilled her duties. Jerusha finds her father in the dark, blessing that dark and picturing the angel. She climbs aboard his skinny frame and does what she can. It isn't like her dreams, and she isn't sure how to tell the job is done until she feels wet running down her thighs and unbecomingly dismounts, hitching one leg up to bring herself free of the still warm cock, standing tall for a few seconds longer, slower than she, to realize its work is done. She leaves her father where he lay, a besotted smile on his face while he dreams of his wife who no longer exists. Or perhaps he dreams that his daughters, round and smiling, come to him in his blameless stupor. Maybe he dreams on of his ripe daughter's sons, rounding out their bellies to full moon before bursting out, sons and grandsons in one, Moab and Ben-Ami. Dreams further of them growing strong and taking wives of their own, fathering hordes of children, Moabites and Ammonites, into generations and generations. And his daughters can set aside the names we've lent them and lie down in the earth. They fulfilled their purpose, mothered 2 races of people. They can rest until the Lord wakes us all at the end of the world.